All right, everybody, get ready to untangle something pretty cool with me today. Because, when you hear the word yarn spinner, you probably think like, oh, fairy tales, right? Like
Yeah.
some kind of magical grandma with knitting needles.
Yeah.
But hold on. Trust me. We are about to take a deep dive into the world of yarn spinners,
Hmm.
the real ones. I'm talking about the people behind the scenes of, well, every sweater and every rug, every piece of fabric that you've ever seen. And their skills are way cooler than you might think, let me tell you.
I mean, it's true. What's so fascinating about this is that we're talking about something that's both like ancient and totally cutting edge at the same time. Like spinning yarn has been around forever, but the yarn spinners of today, they're using some pretty wild technology. They're working with totally new materials. They're basically like shaping the future of textiles.
I love it. I am so ready for those aha
Yeah.
moments. And luckily, we've got RoleCatcher's incredible career guides to help us. So, like, you're thinking about a career as a yarn spinner, RoleCatcher is going to be your best friend. They've got interview prep. They've got
Yeah.
AI insights to help you land the job. But, okay, before we get ahead of ourselves, let's, rewind.
Yeah.
What does a yarn spinner actually do all day?
Okay, so picture this. You're walking into a textile mill. It's buzzing, right? There's this whole symphony of sounds, the whirring of machines, the hum of activity.
I love it.
And in the middle of all this, you've got the yarn spinners. They're like the conductors of this whole textile orchestra.
Yeah.
They're the ones taking those raw fibers, could be like soft, fluffy cotton, luxurious silk, or even like recycled plastic, and they transform it all into these continuous threads. That basically makes up, well, everything.
Okay, hold on. So we're not talking about those charming spinning wheels you see at the craft fair.
I mean, those are awesome, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But in the world of professional yarn spinners, we're talking serious machinery, these like industrial-sized spinning machines. Like, imagine something out of a sci-fi movie.
Really?
Yeah, they can spin fibers crazy fast, and the yarn spinner is the one running the show, making sure everything's working perfectly.
Wow, it sounds super technical.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Think of it like this, the quality of the yarn. That directly affects whatever you're making, right? So imagine a bolt of beautiful silk fabric, and it's like completely ruined because of one little flaw in the yarn.
Oh, no.
That's how precise we're talking.
Wow.
Yarn spinners, they're not just operating machines, they're like masters of their craft, you know? They make sure that every single strand of yarn meets these like really strict standards. So they control the twist, the ply, the denier, and all those things determine how strong the yarn is, the texture, basically how high quality it is.
Okay, whoa. Twist, ply, denier. You're already hitting me with the lingo here.
Yeah.
So a yarn spinner needs to be like a scientist, an artist, and like a master multitasker too, right?
Totally. And it gets even more interesting. Remember those textile mills I mentioned? Well, there's a difference between those and factories. Okay, so a mill usually focuses on just one process, like just spinning that yarn. But a factory might take the yarn and actually turn it into like finished fabrics or clothes.
Okay.
So depending on where a yarn spinner works, they might be on a really specialized team, or they might be part of a way bigger manufacturing operation.
Wow. It's amazing how much goes on behind the scenes, and we often don't even think about it. And speaking of those scenes, RoleCatcher really paints this vivid picture of what it's like to work as a yarn spinner every day. What's it actually like?
Well, get ready for like a full-on sensory experience, that's for sure.
Okay.
Textile mills and factories are these like bustling hubs of activity. You've got machines clattering, the whoosh of the fibers, maybe even a unique smell in the air. It's definitely not your typical office.
Yeah, I can imagine. Definitely not the place for noise-canceling headphones, huh? So what about the dress code? Are we talking like lab coats and goggles?
Think more like practicality and safety first.
Okay.
So you're probably going to be wearing protective gear, safety goggles to keep the dust and fibers out of your eyes, maybe a mask, and almost definitely earplugs because it can get pretty loud.
Yeah, makes sense. So maybe not the most glamorous job, but hey, safety first. And RoleCatcher also mentioned that it's like a pretty physical job. What should someone expect in terms of like the physical demands?
It's true. It's a job that requires you to be on your feet, moving around, tending to those machines all day. You might be lifting and carrying spools of yarn, changing settings, just generally being pretty active.
So yarn spinners, they're not just skilled technicians, but they got to be strong and resilient too.
Oh, yeah.
That's quite a combination.
Yeah,
Sounds like they need to be physically and mentally agile.
totally. And, you know, it's not just about, like, being physically tough when you think about building a career as a yarn spinner.
Yeah, tell me more about that. What does it look like to climb the ranks in the world of yarn spinning?
Well, you usually start out as an apprentice or a yarn spinner assistant, and you're learning the ropes from the pros. You're on the factory floor, getting your hands dirty with the machines, maybe even experimenting with different kinds of fibers.
I love that. It's like this cool mix of like old school apprenticeship with cutting edge tech.
Exactly. And as you get better, you move up, right? So you might become a junior yarn spinner, which means more responsibility. Like, remember we talked about troubleshooting? That's where you got to put those problem-solving skills to work. You're the one who has to figure out why a machine's acting up or how to tweak the settings to get a specific yarn quality.
Oh, that's cool. So it's not just about like following the instructions. You have to actually use your knowledge to make decisions on the spot.
Exactly. And when you become a real expert, you could become a senior yarn spinner. Then you're overseeing a whole production line, training new yarn spinners, even working with like designers and engineers to create totally new kinds of yarn.
Wow. So there's a real chance to be a leader in this field. And I bet as you move up, you get more flexibility, right? Like maybe you have more control over your hours and stuff.
You got it. That definitely comes with experience. As you become the expert, you might have more say in when you work, especially if you're in a smaller company, or you could even go freelance.
Ooh, freelance yarn spinner. That sounds like the dream. Working with independent designers, choosing your own projects.
That's so cool. But wait, you said freelance. Does that mean that some yarn spinners are like setting up their own studios and stuff?
You're picking up what I'm putting down. So yeah, while most yarn is still made in big factories, there are more and more artisan yarn spinners who are creating their own studios. They might do hand spinning, use traditional techniques, or even experiment with really unusual materials. It's like a whole niche within a niche.
That's so cool. Okay, so we've got these big factories, we've got independent studios, we've got like these artisan crafts people. There's so much variety in the yarn spinning world. It's kind of amazing. It really is. And that's something that really struck me about RoleCatcher's insights. They don't just give you like a one-size-fits-all view of a career. They get into the details, the different paths you can take. It's super helpful.
For sure. Okay, so let's say someone is thinking about this career. What are some of the like top skills and qualities that would make a good yarn spinner?
Well, we've mentioned a few already. Attention to detail is huge, being able to solve problems, and being open to learning new things, especially as tech changes. But I think on top of all that, you got to have a genuine passion for textiles.
Yeah, it's got to be more than a job, right? Like you have to really love it.
Absolutely. A good yarn spinner, they're like fascinated by the different fibers, how they can be spun and plied to create different textures. They're a little bit mad scientist, always experimenting, always pushing things to the limit.
I love that. And speaking of pushing limits, what does RoleCatcher say about how technology is changing things for yarn spinners?
Ooh, okay. This is where things get really interesting. Remember we talked about those high-tech spinning machines? Well, with automation and robots becoming more common, the whole industry is changing fast.
Oh, wow. So are robots going to like take over all the yarn spinning jobs?
That is the question, isn't it? Well, that's the million-dollar question, right? But here's the thing. Automation, it might be able to do some of the like repetitive stuff.
Okay.
But that actually frees up yarn spinners to focus on the more creative and technical parts of the job.
That's a good point.
Like imagine having more time to play around with new fibers, coming up with cool blends, really perfecting all the little details that make a yarn, special.
So it's less about being replaced by robots and more about like leveling up your skills to work with the robots.
Exactly. And that's where RoleCatcher's insights are so helpful. They point out these areas you might not expect, like you need to know about administration and management, math, even design. Those are the skills that'll make you stand out as tech changes.
Wow, I never would have thought about that. So it's not just about like being good with your hands. You have to be innovative, adaptable. It's kind of entrepreneurial almost, right? Especially with like sustainable textiles becoming more popular. I bet that's creating a ton of new opportunities for yarn spinners.
Totally. Think about it. People these days, they don't just want something that looks good. They want to know it's made ethically, that it's good for the planet. So yarn spinners who understand sustainable practices, who can work with recycled materials or organic cotton, they're going to be in super high demand.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's like this perfect storm. You've got technology changing everything, people wanting different things, and then this like age-old craft of yarn spinning right in the middle of it all. That's got to be exciting and maybe a little overwhelming if you're thinking about this career.
It's a wild ride, that's for sure. But the cool thing is RoleCatcher doesn't just like throw all this info at you and then leave you hanging.
Right.
They actually give you really practical advice, especially when it comes to getting a job.
Yeah, they're known for their interview prep, right?
Yeah.
They must have some awesome tips for yarn spinners.
Oh, for sure. Their interview question database is seriously impressive, and they have questions specifically about being a yarn spinner. Like, they'll ask you to describe your experience with different kinds of yarn, or tell me about a time you had to solve a technical problem while you were spinning.
Okay, so they're really trying to see if you know your stuff, not just if you can, like, talk a big game.
Exactly. And get this, they even have AI that can give you feedback on your answers. It's like having your own personal coach.
Whoa, that's amazing. Okay, RoleCatcher is starting to sound less like a career website and more like a superpower.
I know, right? They've thought of everything.
This has been such a cool deep dive.
Yeah.
I had no idea there was so much more to yarn spinning than I thought. Like you said, it's both. Like this old tradition and the cutting edge at the same time. Really cool.
I know. It just has to show you, craft never goes out of style. And when you mix that with new technology, the possibilities are endless.
Totally. So if you're the kind of person who likes to work with their hands, who loves to be creative, who's always up for a challenge, yarn spinning might be the perfect career for you. And if you're ready to, like, spin your own success story, check out RoleCatcher. They've got everything you need.
Go get 'em.
That's a wrap on our yarn spinning deep dive. If you want to uncover more fascinating careers, check out our other episodes. Until next time, stay curious.